most how the engine room of government actually works. He's a former secretary to the government of the Federation, Babachir Lawal, and he joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Yeah, thank you, Charles.
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
You've occupied arguably one of the most powerful administrative offices in Nigeria. Help Nigerians understand something fundamental. If someone writes to the office of the Secretary to the government of the Federation claiming to head a federal agency, what verification process ordinarily takes place before that letter is acted upon?
I think this depends on the government. We are running an executive presidential system of government where whether or not you are allowed to do your duties depends on who occupies the topmost position. Some SGFs are just there to occupy the position while the authority is removed from them and given to some personal crony of a president. If the president's method is like that, fine. But in our own case, the president allowed me to do my job completely. Apart from coordinating the activities of government, part of it is appointments. The final approval lies with the president, but the appointment recommendations normally come through the office of the SGF, who puts up a memo to the president, and when the president approves, he sends the memo back to the SGF to issue appointment letters or to look for an alternative. But there are some processes where somebody else, like let's say somebody, the president's former classmate in primary school, will come into the house and say, Muhammadu, that boy, that young chap that was born in Abaleki barracks, he's now a grown-up man and he wants a job. Please, could you help get him a job? In that case, it doesn't come through the SGF. The president will just mail it to the SGF, please appoint. If there's a specific appointment position, he'll say appoint as this and this, or he'll just say look for an appointment. In that case, the SGF will search for a vacancy, write a memo to the president, he will approve. In either case, the SGF is in the middle. He issues the appointment letters.
Right. So the SGF's office is often described as the engine room of the government.
Yes.
Is it realistic that correspondence from an agency that allegedly did not legally exist could be received, processed, and forwarded? Apologies for that. Is it possible that it could be received, processed, and forwarded without somebody asking in the SGF's office exactly who are these people?
No, if it's done that way, it means there's a dereliction of duty on the side of the SGF. If it were me, what I would do with that correspondence is to minute it down to one of the permanent secretaries, generally the permanent secretary, GSO, General Services Office, to treat. And what he treats is, in treating that, he locates in our own time, he will locate the file of the agency, and he will go through the processes of appointment. The act setting of that agency would sometimes say the position has to be advertised and interviewed and shortlisted, names sent to the president for approval. Some he just spread and just approves. So the SGF will go through the file, and in that process of due diligence, we'll be able to find out whether such organization exists, because then there will be no record for it in the SGF's office. So he will raise a red flag on it. Right.
So when you were SGF, anyone could simply not create an agency on paper and begin corresponding with ministries and departments? Or are there, were there institutional checks that should immediately expose something like that?
Yeah, what we used to do is, if there's a new agency that either the president or one minister proposes to handle some specific assignments or duties, he will first of all raise a memo to the president, who will approve that such be created. And then a memo will be sent to the Federal Executive Council on that particular agency, and we will debate it. Now, sometimes it will require some legislation to give that agency legal mandate to operate, some to just be within the presidential approval, and then the agency is created. Because really you cannot appropriate funds to an agency that has not been legislated for. I mean, there has to be a legal basis for its existence. But first of all, it is the executive that raises such agency, makes the proposal, debates it, and the Attorney General of the Federation will normally put an opinion on it, and then if the Federal Executive Council approves, it's sent to the legislature for legal establishment.
Now, one of the documents now in the public domain shows the SGF's office forwarding a request from the Presidential Foreign Investment Promotion Council to another government agency. Does forwarding such correspondence amount to official recognition, or can it simply be an administrative routine without validating the sender?
It should not have arisen in the first place if it is not legally approved agency. It should not exist. And the SGF would know that if it doesn't exist, on what basis is it forwarding a request? It won't exist. If it doesn't exist, such will not happen in our time.
The presidency says this council is fictitious, yet official documents suggest government offices were engaging with it. As a former SGF yourself, how do you reconcile those two positions? Because the presidency now says internal collaborators will be identified. Does that statement itself suggest this was more than the alleged actions of sort of an errant individual?
I don't like your characterization of everything as the presidency. I asked that question one time. I said,
well, I mean,
who is the presidency?
The statement is coming from the presidency, and that's the basis on which...
No, you have to be specific. You see, the presidency is a whole gamut of agencies that report directly to the president through the SGF's office. You know, the whole of that entity is called the presidency. Now, when you talk of presidency said this,
well, we're talking about the spokesman for the office of the president.
Okay, so the spokesman to the president. Yeah. Well, he is not in a position. The president would, I'm sure, assume that such entity has gone through all the checks and balances before it is established, and therefore, not every communication from that agency needs to be verified. But as far as it is coming through the office of the SGF, due diligence must be done first before it is forwarded. Now, this is why I told you some of the administrative processes depend on who the president is. Before our time, all communications to the president used to go through the SGF from ministers. During the inauguration of our own administration, the president did make a statement in which correspondences from the ministers to the president must go through the chief of staff. Now, you see, that is a change from the norm, but it has to be complied with. But I knew that the president was new, we were all new, and who wrote the speech? It was the chief of staff, of course, that wrote the speech. So we all know what has happened. But I don't communicate to the president through the chief of staff because I was the secretary to the government. And later, even some ministers realized that if they wanted their communications attended to promptly, it should pass through the SGF's office, which has the data to process it.
Right.
The office of the chief of staff is a personal staff to the president, and just to organize the president for his functions to work very well. So it's not likely that the chief of staff would issue a press release on anything, you know, because it's not the president has come his spokespeople who he will call and instruct to do what they need to do. But when the government is run in a dysfunctional manner, you create pockets of authorities, pockets of big men who think they don't need to go through the processes. Nigeria is too big for one man to be able to run single-handedly. But with this government, it tended to be like the president has not realized that he's not governing Lagos. He's governing Nigeria, big, massive, with about 37 legacies. And so quite a few people that know him very well seem to have developed the attitude of sidelining other operators of the system because they have the president's ear or because they know how the president operates.
So you think the SGF might have been sidelined?
I don't think so. I mean, it's not thinking. This SGF has been sidelined in a lot of things from what we hear. It has been sidelined, a lot of things.
Right. Well, because the reason I ask is that when you look at what we are told has happened, opening accounts with the central bank, corresponding with ministries, seeking office accommodation, allegedly interacting with diplomats. I mean, these are not small administrative steps. No. Looking at that entire sequence, does it strike you more as institutional failure or institutional compromise?
It's institutional compromise, because in this, I sense there is quite a big racket going on. Somewhere along the line, I mean, if you do not, if the agency was created by maybe one big man alone, and then he wants to go through the budget process, the budget office assigns the budget code according to the Charter of Accounting, GIFMIS. So how did they manage to assign the budget code for this agency that does not exist? Who inserted, because first of all, the budget office issues a budget circular to MDAs and everybody starts to prepare his budget according to the budget line. They give you ceilings, you know, and you prepare your budget and forward it to the budget office as an agency or ministry. Now, the Ministry of Budget and Planning would, in our time, called every MDA to come and defend its budget. Now, if you don't exist, how do they recognize that you are?
That's a good point.
If you are a genuine entity, who gave out the budget code and allowed their budget to pass? If that system fails at the ministry level, there is an appropriation committee in the House of Rep. There's one in the Senate. At least one of them, when they are doing the budget oversight, or when they are preparing the budget, should be able to know that based on the chart of accounts, based on the budget of last year, there's a new agency that has come up, which was not in last year's budget. How did it come about? You know, and they can flag it there and begin to trace. And then, of course, they will call the MDA to come and defend the budget.
And that's what oversight is about.
That is what oversight is. Yeah, they'll call it to come. In my own time, all the 23 agencies that report directly to the SGF, when it's time to defend the budget, I attend. I attend with the MDA that's going to defend the budget. So now, why would they not detect that this MDA reports to who? If that budget, if that MDA is part of the presidency, that it reports to the president through the SGF. The SGF should be able to know, because before it gets to the National Assembly, that budget goes also.
Right. So in that regard, how much responsibility ultimately rests with the office of the Secretary to the government when something like this happens?
I can tell you, unless there's a dereliction of duty by the SGF's office, the responsibility to flag that this is a fake agency would have come from them. But if after some time, maybe they feel so much sidelined that they don't care, they just look the other way because but the responsibility to flag that comes from the SGF's office. It has to. I would do. If that happens to me, I'll go to the president. If you sideline me, I'll go to the president. I protest immediately. So nobody sidelines me because they know I don't accept it.
They know not to cross you.
Yeah, they know not to cross me. Yeah.
But do you think, knowing what you know so far, and I know some of the information is not, all available, and part of it, the criminal element of it is in court and all the rest of it. Do you think Nigerians, as a former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, deserve a full administrative inquiry into how this allegedly happened, separate from the criminal proceedings already before the court?
I don't think it should even be administrative alone. It should be judicial inquiry.
Right.
Because, you see, Nigerians are talking about how 1.3 billion naira was inserted into the budget. The man himself first said the quarrel came about because he refused to part with 48% of the 27 point something billion naira takeoff grants. That money has been spent before this is looking for the budget. Who gave him the money? It was not appropriated for, it's not in any budget, that 27.5 billion for which he says somebody demanded 48%. Who gave him the money? How did the process of generating the request for the release come up? How did it go up? We are just talking about the tip of the iceberg here. Down there, before we got to here, 28.5 billion had already been disbursed, according to him, as takeoff grants. How did that money get to him? It was not in the budget. So this is what should frighten us. If such money can go to a fictitious organization, we only now begin to see it when we are quarreling about how did it get into the budget. How did that money get to them?
The presidency argues that the system ultimately worked because suspicious officials reported the matter and the alleged fraud was detected. Is that evidence that the safeguards functioned or evidence that they failed for far too long before eventually working?
Charles, I think we all know that thieves and armed robbers always fight and they expose themselves during sharing. His complaint was that the presidency was after him because somebody demanded 48% of the takeoff grant of 27.5 billion. And so somebody was not happy since he refused to part with that money. So you see, that's how we got to know this to start with. That is the reason why we got to know this is on side of the coin. It's about the sharing of the 27.5%. That's why the thing came up. So it didn't work. It should have worked before that money left the government coffers to the account of the agency. There are papers that must be signed before you can open an account with any bank. Accountant General must those the papers, give the permission, he must give the signatories to the account. All this due diligence must be made because those signatures are captured into the GIFMIS. This money left.
Some opposition parties, including your former party, the ADC, have called for senior officials to step aside while investigations continue. From a governance perspective, is that good democratic practice or is it premature at this stage?
It depends on the will of the president.
Well, your own assessment.
Well, I can use myself as an example. When there was this brouhaha between me and the Senate, you remember the president, I was not the president, but I was suspended for some time while investigation was going on. So now that is best practice, isn't it? But it's more than this because he had named who he was quarreling with. He has named he was quarreling with Babachir. And he has named, for example, that he bought the appointment for 600 million naira and they deposited 400 million. That is serious enough on its own. That's a serious enough case, a separate enough case apart from whether conniving to register. Or the presidency avoided that issue. Did he buy the appointment? Did he buy the appointment or he didn't buy it? Nobody talked about that. Because if he bought the appointment as a business, that is what gives him the courage to say he's not going to part with the 48% of the profits he's going to make.
Well, the man himself says all will be exposed in court. That's what he's been suggesting. But a lot of people are calling for separate inquiries apart from the criminal proceedings. But if you were still SGF today, what immediate steps would you recommend that the president should take, not to manage the politics, but to restore public confidence?
If at the third point of SGF, the SGF didn't flag this as a fictitious agency. I think it was the chief of staff that went public with it. Now, he went public with it because obviously the internal processes had failed or had not been initiated. But within them, they should have done some internal review of the problem until it becomes intractable or until get to a stage where the People need to know. They didn't do anything about it. Everybody just kept quiet and was shifting memos, so on and so forth, until Bajabemla says he wrote to the police and so on and so forth. The SGF should have instituted an internal inquiry to find out, because they are the ones at the center of this, at the NGO room, like you would like to say. They should have worked out. If it's them that should have involved the police or involved. What's the work of the chief of staff? The chief of staff just works with organized president's office. Why was he issuing press releases? On what basis? What was the basis of his involvement? Unless he was involved at the criminal stage of the thing. What was it not? It's not his business. It's not his business.
So what do you think should happen at the SGF's office now?
It's already the thing already out of their hands. I believe now the thing is in the president's desk.
Right. So it's up to the president what action to take.
It's up to the president what action to take.
This controversy has also raised questions, and I think you touched on it briefly previously, about the National Assembly, where budgets are supposed to be scrutinized line by line.
Yes.
How could any allocation allegedly connected to a non-existent agency escape legislative scrutiny? I mean, does this episode expose weaknesses not only within the executive, but also about legislative oversight?
It's legislative oversight. The National Assembly, the first budget, I remember one of my senators was saying that they only go to see the copy of the budget the day it was going to be approved. So this government, this National Assembly has no interest in scrutinizing the budget that comes before them. Most of the legislators just go in there to earn their salaries and collect allowances and go. They don't scrutinize the budget line by line. So I believe that we all know how this particular government works. There are some people that when they talk, nobody else has the authority to contravene.
So in that regard, do you think this is an isolated incident, or does it expose deeper structural weaknesses in this administration?
It's not a once-off thing. The issue of buying of appointment is not new. People have been hearing it as rumors. The allegations all over that in this government, people buy appointments. We've had it on the streets. And so this is not a new thing.
But is it unique to this government, or has that been practiced for a long period of time?
I don't know. In our time, nobody was buying appointment. At
least not to your knowledge.
No, it's not to my knowledge. It's not to my knowledge that people buy appointment. It probably could be, but I wouldn't know that.
Right.
It's not part of our mandate to know such things.
You've served at the highest levels of government. When ordinary Nigerians hear that an office described by the presidency as fictitious was nevertheless able to interact with government institutions, many conclude that government itself has become too porous. Are they wrong to reach that conclusion, or has this controversy genuinely exposed serious institutional weaknesses that must now be fixed? I mean, that's what I'm talking about, beyond this particular government.
This government doesn't take governance seriously.
Yeah, but this government portrays itself as a reform-driven government. So that is a reform that must be carried out, mustn't it?
Yeah, it portrays itself to who now, and who believes that that's what they are. When things like this happen, Nigerians are not surprised. We are only interested in this because we have an opportunity to poke attacks on the government, not because we don't know that these things happen in this government. It's so porous. There are so many power centers that nobody does the budget. Nobody implements budget. Ministers go to the office and sit and read newspapers. Overheads, maybe if they are lucky, it comes one per quarter. I think it's paid quarterly. Some government don't even get overheads. Everybody is redundant. But this money is being appropriated and money is being spent, but nobody sees where the money is going to. So that is part of the loopholes. Why are you not interested in 27.85 billion naira that had already been collected and spent? I mean, to an agency that we are claiming doesn't exist. Maybe the budget it exists, but it doesn't have a legal framework for its existence, but it exists. And there are a lot of powerful people that make sure it exists in that form. And those are the people we need to expose. The chief of staff, in particular, is so powerful you know, and the SGF is there, just reneging on his responsibilities, and nothing has happened now. When was this matter reported to the police? They say September, and we are just hearing it after maybe the man refused to part with 28%.
Well, in fairness, he has to. They have to carry out their own investigation, the police, obviously, before they then prosecute someone.
It takes how long now?
Well, I don't know.
So they have no interest until the thing. Maybe now the man chop 13 point something billion, which should have gone to them, and they say we'll pull him down.
Well, let me just say this, that much as we respect a lot of what you say, the presidency, the SGF's office, and the administration as a whole has a right of reply if they wanted to reply to some of the things that you have said. I want to thank you